Hey everyone, my name is Corey Rennie. I'm the Unemployable Counsellor, and I'd like to thank you for tuning in to what is the inaugural episode of the Unemployable Counsellor podcast, or the Unemployable Podcast. What the whole plan of this is, I'm just a local guy, a Métis from Saskatchewan. I like to explore things and find out new things, and I really like to see how things work. And a lot of times you got to ask some good people to do that. So, the whole premise of this is simply that. We're going to explore the world. We're going to answer questions. If you have any suggestions, put them in the comments. We're going to have interviews. We're going to have guest spots. We're going to do all kinds of stuff that you wouldn't believe. It's going to be a lot of fun, so I hope you tag along for the ride. And again, thank you for checking out what is going to be our very first episode of the Unemployable Podcast. So, I know what you're thinking, but Corey Rennie, the Unemployable Counsellor, what is the topic? Well, for the first episode, I thought there's something that I don't know a lot about, but I'm really interested in it. And that is, oddly enough, cults. That's right, cults with an L. So, what do you think of when you think of cults? What is the visual you get? Can you define it? Because that's the hard thing. How do you define a cult? How do you know that something is a cult? Right? We've all seen religions or political parties or groups of people that you think, oh man, I'm not doing that, that's a cult. Well, what exactly is a cult? Right? Because there's the idea we get in our head. I always think of Airplane, where you got Robert Stack, remember the show Airplane, the comedy? He's walking the theater and you have all these groups of people of different religious or spiritual affiliations running up trying to give him pamphlets and flowers. And he's smacking them around and doing all this stuff, right? Because he's just plowing through them, right? So if you're thinking of the hippies at the airport, or the bald guys, or maybe the Manson family, which is pretty close to it, the cult. But we're going to get to that, right? But how do you define it? What do you think about it? What's that in your mind's eye? Because cults itself, there's no clear definition for it. Otherwise, it'd be easy for people to go and say, okay, this is a cult, we need to do something about it. You don't really know. And there's lots of reasons why you don't really know. And we're going to talk about that a little bit today. So the key thing for me when I think about cults is that, like I said, it's not clearly defined. You can't just pick one point out and say, those cultists, right? Are hippies cultists? Because they subscribe to a way of life. They all work towards a common goal. There's usually a hierarchy. Are hippies in a cult? Maybe, but it depends what's going on. See, cults, there's many different beliefs around even what it is, right? But we'll take a generalized view for the purpose of this discussion. It's an organized group whose purpose is to dominate cult members through psychological manipulation and pressure strategies. I know you're thinking, but man, that sounds like marriage. And it kind of does. Because you don't realize what kind of situation you're in until you're out of it, right? And I'm sure a lot of us can relate to that regardless of what it is. You don't see necessarily the chaos around you or what's transpiring when you're in it, because you're a part of it. But once you remove yourself from that situation, you can kind of see it, and when enough time passes, you get more of an objective eye about what that is. Then you can kind of say, okay, I realized that was a bad way. Oh, that was a bad relationship. Oh, it was this, right? Those things matter, okay? Now, some experts suggest that this cohesive behavior, coercion, it's not tied to a specific faith, religion, or belief systems. It's about that hierarchy, that structure, with a leader and with followers. And usually the leader might have a cabal or a group of people around him, but all that is being done is to do what that leader wants, follow his wishes, okay? So we're going to break it down like this. First, we're going to talk about the characteristics of a cult, right? They include a charismatic, authoritarian leader, right? Someone who can talk, right? They always say the silver-tongued devil. Someone who can project that image of power. They know everything, right? He's a powerful, or she's a powerful leader who will isolate members from the rest of society. So you're with us, we need to go this. No, you can't go with them, right? And you got to be loyal to me. And that's number 2, demand loyalty, right? Excessive devotion for the leader. You need not only to follow me, but you need to hang on every word I say, and you need to believe what I say is true, because I'm the only one who's going to be honest with you. Okay? That's where the coercion and the control comes into play, right? It's they may employ unethical manipulation tactics to control, and and persuade members to maybe do things that they might not want to do. Okay? Or it's like, you know what? This is for the good of the group. It's going to help us as a whole. You need to do this. Or sometimes it's commit crimes, or sometimes it's to do this, right? But you need to do this for us because we're doing this together. We rely on you. You're an important member, and we need you to do this. Okay? And then there's exploitation. The primary goal of any cult is to advance the leader's objectives, right? There's no cult with a bunch of guys sitting around smoking pot. That's just, right? That's just a party, right? They're working towards a goal. It's not their goal. It's the leader's goal. She is dictating it to you how to connect those things and do that for them. And you need to do this, right? Even if it may harm the individual, families, communities, it doesn't matter. The bottom line is you need to do what the leader needs you to do, okay? Isolation, right? Members are encouraged to cut ties with people outside of the group. It could be family, friends, whatever. But it's like, this is the only view that matters. When we're talking to outside people, they don't have your best interests at heart like we do. Okay? You can kind of see how, especially if an individual maybe has some addiction issues or mental health issues, maybe trauma, time on the streets, runaway, they don't really have that family unit. You can see where individuals like that could be taken. You isolate them further. You indoctrinate them with what you want to present to the world because you need them, because they're vital. They feel like they have a place to belong, and you have someone who's going to do what you need them to do. See how that kind of connects all by itself? And then there's the us versus them mentality. Okay, we've all heard about that, right? Group claims to be on the side of truth and authority. Everyone, I speak truth to power. I speak the truth, and they're out to get us. They're out to get us if we do anything to disrupt that flow. If they come in here, they're going to cause trouble, right? Everyone outside the group is portrayed as wrong or untrustworthy and even evil. Those people are evil. Only we know the way to get through this, right? Interesting, hey? So you figure that if that is the characteristics of a cult, then you got to think, well, why would people want to join a cult? Why would you want to be a part of something where you're just subservient and you're just a cog working for somebody else, doing things that you probably would never ever do, but now you feel like you have to because you have to keep, not only do you have to earn your place to belong, you have to keep it. So you have to keep doing those things. You don't want to disappoint fearless leader, right? It's all manipulation. It's all coercion. It's that psychological gameplay. And if you're in a weakened state, and by weakened state I mean if you're struggling with things, weakened state is probably the wrong way to put it. But if you're in if you're having issues psychologically or with addiction, right? That's why people join the cults, right? They don't know, and there's a few things to know. Why do people join the cults? Number one is they don't know they're in one. Okay, hey, I think there is Smallville had a young lady on it who played Chloe Sullivan, I believe, on the show. Allison Court? No, not Allison Court. I can't remember what her name was exactly, unfortunately, but it was the Nexum cult, right? Like a sex cult. And I was like, oh, I enjoyed this empowerment group. It's empowering to women. It's all these sorts of things. But yet, it was all tailored to satisfy the leader, right? And his cabal. See what I mean? It doesn't matter who you are. You can get kind of sucked into that kind of mindset. Some people might even talk about Patty Hearst, right? That's more of a Stockholm syndrome. But man, all of a sudden, she was a part and she was fighting for the leader and she had to do that, right? How did that happen? Because see, most people don't recognize that the group they're in is considered a cult. People are attracted to groups that, are considered, people are attracted to groups because a lot of times groups we tailor-made to attract those that have vulnerabilities that make them more likely to join. Like I said, anxiety, some mental health issues, substance abuse issues, those sorts of things, right? And if they have unresolved insecurities, right, like attachment insecurity, right, can those insecurities come up, and if they feel somewhere where they can belong, where they matter, a group that promises acceptance, they're going to be open to that because they're lacking that in their life. This is providing something for them that they don't have, or they think they don't have, right? That's how that goes. Same with, again, why do people join cults? Because they're isolated, right? They'll join a cult, they might even be isolated themselves, and all of a sudden they fall in where a place where, oh man, I don't have to worry about the outside world. I get to stay here. They take care of me. They become dependent on the people in the cult, and they become suspicious of anyone outside the group because they're not seeing it like they are. And you don't know these guys. We just all get together and sing songs around a fire, despite the fact that we sacrifice someone or whatever, right? You don't see that for what it is. You're looking at it through a lens of you want to belong. So it's almost like you don't pick up on those cues because you're there primarily to have holes filled in you that you haven't had filled before or haven't think that. So now all of a sudden it's like, okay, this is what it is, right? A lot of times, they always call them, they'll become brainwashed. You hear that a lot, right? Why do some people think the cult members become brainwashed? There is some science behind it, right? As members are often told that they're going to be prosecuted by outside members. They don't believe us. They don't trust us, right? They indoctrinate this fear of the outside. So the only people you have is them. They are there for you. See what I mean? Yeah. Then there's manipulated into joining. Another theory about why people stay in cults is sociological, right? Leaders will promise rewards or promotion or convince them that something good is going to happen to that group, right? Something good is coming. You just have to wait. So you hang on a little longer. You're promised something. Maybe it's a higher ascension or enlightenment or something's ahead of them that they just can't quite grasp. Often they never hit that point. But it's enough to keep the horse walking towards that carrot that's dangling in front of them. See? This group is special. You just have to sit around and wait for it to happen. Right? See what I'm getting at? I find that pretty interesting because a lot of them in the groups end up being subjected to psychological abuse, manipulation tactics, can lure members into making unhealthy decisions, including up to suicide. So even self-harm, right? So it's a matter of you're so manipulated, you're following what is being told, and a lot of it is repeat. A lot of it is just, pretty soon it's almost like muscle memory. You just keep flipping around, right? And you can't leave it once you're in it because leaving is hard, right? No financial resources, no outside contact, impossible to get help. How do you battle that? How does that happen, right? So, it's a difficult thing when you start thinking about it, right? But what are some of the warning signs, right? So let's say you got this group of people, it's all fun, you're doing all this cool stuff. What are the warning signs that it's a cult, right? People may disagree about a group, right? Religious groups, political, etc., right? Are they actually a cult, right? Even reasoning with them can't because, again, with the definition kind of up in the air, how do you know it's a cult or not? Although most would agree that the leader of a group of people, right, will serve as leader and are responsible for the rules that govern the members. So, you join a group, I'm the leader, all of a sudden, nope, you're in bed by 9, that's the rules. Nope, no touchy, no kissing, nothing, right? Everyone leads a celibate lifestyle, right? Because according to the Cult Education Institute, there are specific warning signs to look for when considering if a group might be a cult, okay? And they are things like absolute authoritarianism without accountability. They have the final say, but there's no one to challenge. There's no one to point anything out. Their word is law, and your role is to follow it without question, okay? Zero tolerance for questions or criticism, right? Number 2. You can't criticize. I think this is a bad idea. That would be a bad idea because you have no voice. Your role is to do what I tell you to do, right? Lack of meaningful financial disclosures regarding budget. So you're donating money, but yet you don't know where this money's going, okay? It's like they always need more money. You need to work this because we need money for this, but yet you don't know where this money is going. You know what's happening with that paper trail, what they're buying, what they're doing with that money, right? Belief that former members are wrong for leaving, and there's never a legitimate reason for anyone to leave. If you leave here, basically it's not us, it's you. You're the issue, right? And if you're out there, man, you didn't belong, and everyone else in that member will either be like, man, they're evil, they're not to be associated with, they're tainted, they let the outside world in, and what we got here is too good, right? Abuse of members. And like I said, I mentioned psychological abuse, but there can be sexual, physical, just the mental torment that goes through people's minds in these cases where you're stuck. You can't get out, you can't get in. Which leads to the next thing. Records, books, everything is documented, right? Because the leader has his own way to do that. And the next thing you know, whatever you've done, you did this, we have this. And it turns into more of that psychological cat and mouse game where I'm stuck. If I leave, they have these things that I said or that I did. They know the things I did because a lot of times they're with the coercion, with you're being coerced and doing things you don't want to do. Oftentimes that can be things like prostitution, it can be more, lots of serious crimes, all those sorts of things based off what the leader needs. And again, the followers feel that they are never able to be good enough. They're just short of where they need to be. And they have to keep trying, they have to keep listening. More importantly, they have to keep working on whatever the leader wants them to do. Right? Because the next one, number 9, the leader is always right. You believe that the leader is always right. Doesn't matter if the sky is blue. If he tells you it's red, it's red. There's no two ways about it. Right? Basically, the belief that the leader is the exclusive means of knowing truth or giving validation. The only one who knows for certain the truth in the world is this leader. He is the only one that can help us out of this, right? He's the only one. He's the guiding light, or she's the guiding light, right? That's why cults are dangerous, because they typically rely on deceptive and authoritarian practices to make members dependent and obedient to the group, right? They cut them off from other forms of social and financial support, pose both physical and psychological and sexual risks to members of the group. Everything they're doing is to ensure that they get what they want, and you're going to get it for them because you don't have a choice. See what I'm getting at? Cults are fascinating to me, right? Because a lot of times they're just people that are trying to, find a place to belong. And those are the individuals that cults kind of target, right? Those lost souls. You got, it was the runaways. It was the, like I said, the substance abuse users, maybe mental health issues. If there's trauma or violence in the home they're trying to escape from, now they have a place to go where not only are they welcome, they're valued, but the price you pay is you. The only currency you have is you. And as long as that currency is valid and you're doing things that the higher structure that the leader wants to have happen, then you have a place to belong there, right? But it's the cost of everything else. You can't go outside the group. You can't, think on your own. Every decision is the leader's. And if you have a question, don't ask it, because you don't ask questions. You follow orders, right? And I think about some famous cults, and I'm going to talk about a couple now. Right? And we all heard, like I mentioned earlier, Charles Manson. Right? Here is a guy, a failed songwriter. Right? I mentioned a bunch of hippies sitting in the woods. It's like late 1960s. And here is this guy who ended up in jail, not for committing the crimes, but for conspiracy to commit murder, because he talked his followers into killing, because there's a race war coming. Right? So he talked him into going and killing. They ended up being called the Sharon Tate murders. I know Sharon Tate was pregnant, right? Murdered people in the house. They got caught. They all went to jail, and Charles Manson went to jail because he was the orchestrator. He was the leader. He might not physically have gotten his hands dirty, but it was his will and his words that pushed them to that point. See what I mean? You talk about a silver-tongued devil. To get people to follow you to the point, and they're so indoctrinated to what they believe you are, that they're willing to commit murder and other crimes just to please you because you said it. It's diabolical, right? Jim Jones, Jonestown, right? He created the People's Temple in 1955 in Indianapolis, of all places. Moved to Eureka, California, right? And then he moved to Guam, or I believe it was Guyana, sorry. Guyana, Guyana. Alright, my pronunciations are way off, right? But in the late 1970s, 900 followers died from drinking cyanide-laced Kool-Aid, right? And Jim Jones was found dead with a bullet in his head, right? So he got these people to drink Kool-Aid. He didn't say it was poison, but he got everyone, and you hear that expression, drank the Kool-Aid, that's where it comes from, right? He had these people convinced that he was this Messiah-type figure, right? And he was right, and the world was against him. Enough so much that they all died because of what he told them they should be believing and what they should be doing, right? The one that gets me is Heaven's Gate, right? This is a UFO religious cult. You know, it started in the 1970s, but in 1997, around the time Halley's Bob Comet was flowing through, 39 members put on matching clothes, ingested barbiturates, castrated themselves, and then put plastic bags over their heads until they were dead. All because they were going to ascend to the spacecraft that was following the Halley Bob Comet, and it would be transcending on to this next part of life. Okay? And then lastly, I remember this as a kid. I remember a few of these as a kid, but David Koresh, Waco, Texas, right? He said he was the next Messiah, sort of stockpiling weapons, pairing kids off with adults for marriage. When the FBI eventually went in there, 75 people died, and Koresh was found with a bullet in the head. A lot of them take suicide over accountability because you don't hold them to account. They're above you. And I think that's one of the most common threads with everything here, right? So, cults. A very short kind of conversation about cults in about 24 minutes. But the one thing I find is that if you don't know who you are and you're struggling, you're vulnerable for someone to step in and help you find who you are, but often at the cost of who you really are. You become something different. And I think of the ones involved with Charles Manson, right? So you look like some of them, I think one is still in jail, I believe, or on some sort of parole, but this is almost 40 years later. Their whole life was gone because they listened to, right, like I said, a failed songwriter who smoked a lot of dope, right, and was, not tethered to society. And the more they isolated themselves, the more bizarre and the more dangerous they become, right? Like there's hundreds of cults, probably more than that, across the world right now, right? That we don't even know about. You hear about these little sects of, groups of populations, whether it's, when you look at Bountiful, BC, you look at, Quebec. There's a few in Quebec up in the mountains where there's a doomsday cult because they thought the world was going to die. They thought the world was going to blow up, and it didn't, right? But, it's like, but he got another vision. They pushed it off 2 years. Well, you know what? I don't know I don't know who was bringing about the world's end, but I don't think they would. I'm like, hold on. I want to see how, I want to see what happens on Better Call Saul or something. I got to catch up on my shows first, right? But it's interesting. Okay, that's cults. The way I look at it. That's what I see. That's who figures it out. What do you think? Put in the comments below. If you think I'm out to lunch, put it in there. If you have any ideas for any other videos, put it in there. We're hoping to do at least 1 or 2 of these a month as we get going. Over time, we're kind of looking at doing, maybe 3 a month. I work full time, man, so I only got so much time. But I'm thinking if we can start off doing that, let me know what topics you're interested in, and we'll go from there. 25 minutes is not bad. I'm Corey Rennie, the Unemployable Counselor. I thank you for watching this. Please, if you haven't already, subscribe, share, like. It really helps us out, and I like to keep doing this, so let's get the word out. All right, thank you again, and that's the kind of day it's been. All right, take care, everybody.